This is Ruben Lowing here in McAllen. It's Wednesday, late afternoon. I headed to church a little early. I had a epiphany today that came from two experiences very close together. So I have a friend. She's Luisa Montalvo. And she was the first runner-up in the Toastmasters International Speech Contest. And she lives here in the Rio Grande Valley. And she gives a lot of talks about about the cultural challenges or communication challenges here in the Rio Grande Valley. And I watch her. She has this ability when it comes to difficult people that's just phenomenal. And what she does is when somebody does something that's inappropriate, or they're yelling, or they're pouty, or they're angry, she goes in her mind, what's bothering them? And she figures out what it is, and she addresses it, or she will, knowing what it is, work with it. Okay. So I was given a speech on intercultural communications. And I've seen, I knew a guy that started a business teaching intercultural communications. And he worked in a hospital where 90% of the people were Asian, and they're excellent workers. They go through their life with blinders on and accomplish their tasks and get their job done, but they weren't being cordial, or they weren't interacting with the patients. And so they started, and the hospital makes money by keeping the beds full. And these people that were hospice patients, they wanted to go home and die and be around their loved ones. And so they taught these nurses and orderlies to be more personable and caring and congenial, empathetic to the patients. And so he started a business teaching other businesses, how to get their multicultural teams to work together. And it occurred to me while I was putting this talk together that what Luisa does isn't what you do for certain cultures. It's what everybody should be doing with everybody. And it's really figuring people out, listening to them, empathizing with them, understanding them. Okay. So then I get on the call. I get a call from my best friend I grew up with in Michigan, and he got a big inheritance from his family, and then he made even more money in real estate, and he's pretty arrogant, and he'll tell you he knows he is. All right, but we're friends, and I know him. I got thick skin, I can deal with him. And he calls me today, and I sent him. I had a challenge with somebody who was a Marine, and they didn't want to do our business because it wasn't, they wanted to do something physical. They wanted, it bored them or whatever, right? And so I sent a text to Dan Charlier. Had him in my phone, met him years ago. And when he made SMD, and he was there when my wife left me, and he's like, "Yeah, it's her loss." and I sent him a text, and he called me, and he remembered who I was. He remembered that I was a Navy SEAL. He remembered that I was a boxer. All right, he knew what team I was on the blue team, and he sent me a video link with him and Marshall Falk doing a Zoom 7-step. Well, they don't do 7 steps. I guess it was a BPM, right? And I sent that to my best friend. And he called me up and he goes, "There's just something, I just can't put my finger on it, but it's like one of those things." And he told me this story about this girl that he was dating, and she took him to a home meeting for some, MLM, nutritional supplement business. And it's not the first time that's happened to me. And I'm like, okay, so you were in real estate. So you're in sales. Didn't you get most of your business from referrals, warm market referrals? All right. And I knew that was the case, right? And he got referrals because he did a good job for his people. He sold their house at the best price, whatever. Okay. And so selling wasn't the problem. And I figured out what it was. He never became a broker. Now, I was a broker. I got my license in California, and I got my broker's license so I could hire salespeople, licensed salespeople, and I could override them. And I hired a bunch of them. And there were like 3 of them that were producers. They would actually produce. But I found, all 3 of them, when I would audit their files, I found fraud. And I closed those files down, right? One of them, 2 of them cost me a lot of money. 14 files. I don't know what the number was, 14, but they all had 14 files that I closed those loans right down because I caught them in fraud. Right, and then I hired a manager, and every night or a couple nights a week he'd have like 26 people in the office, and he's teaching them. He's running like a course on how to pass your your license exam, and nobody's producing. He's in my office late. I got to be there because I get the key, and then nobody's producing. Okay, so being in charge of a team, I don't care what your business is a challenge. Okay, you got to get people that have never done sales before. It's a challenge for them. It takes a while. Even if people have done sales before, doing something different in sales before can be a challenge. Okay, it's somebody who's never, they're used to like wham bam, thank you ma'am, sign here, give me a check, and let me get paid, right? And what we do is different. In fact, what we do is so different, it takes sometimes years for people to get what we get. We got to be patient, all right? You got to really care about the people that you're working with, right? Because if they don't participate in the right way, it isn't going to work either, okay? And what I mean by that, all right, is they have to be interactive with their own finances. They have to be, they got to pay attention. They got to make adjustments. Had somebody talking on a Titan call last week saying that they're continually working on their financial foundation. It's a never-ending, continually changing evolution. Okay, and if you don't have your people, doing that, working with you in that process, it's just not going to work. Okay, and that's so different than what people perceive. They're thinking, okay, the system's going to run everything. The system's going to, we're going to recruit people, going to, take them to a meeting. They're going to hear about a system, and they're just going to do it. Not at all. Right? They just, you've got to fan that flame until that fire takes off. All right? And a big part of it is they got to have a dream or a purpose. Okay? And there's a guy, his pen name is Ben Gay III, and he wrote the book The Closers. And he talks about leadership in his book. He says if there's a gymnasium full of people milling around smartly, just skylarking, and somebody comes around with enough enthusiasm and says, "Come on, let's go!" the majority will follow unto a point where they determine which direction he's going. And if they like the direction he's going, they'll keep following. But if they determine that they don't want to go in the direction he's going, they're not going to follow. All right? And if the direction he's going doesn't feed into their expectations or their dreams and goals, all right, they're not going to follow. And in fact, if they don't have any greater expectations or dreams and goals, right, they will stop following. And that's really important. If somebody doesn't follow right off the bat, doesn't move off the X, that person is another leader. And you got to go back to them and say, hey, where do you want to go? And if you can show them by following you, they can get to their goal faster, they'll lead from the front. If you got somebody, those ones in between, you got to feed their dream. You got to get them to think greater. That's why we show the video for the super trip, because it gets their mind to expand. It takes them to the possibility of travel, thinking about where they want to go. All right, and here's what's really smoking hot about that: when you get people to visualize outside of where they are, their current place in life, it pulls them out of their subconscious programming. And when you do that, when you separate that, okay, that opens them up to gain new information. I'll tell you how. Because when they lock onto that goal, their amygdala, they're in their brain, right, it hooks onto it like a heat-seeking missile. Okay, so even when they go into crisis mode, they go into beta brainwave, right? That's now part of their subconscious programming, that desire for that goal, right? And so no matter what's going on, they're always going to hunt for, their brain is always going to try to find the path to get them closer to that goal. That's why it's important to have a goal. That's why it's important to have people establish a dream, an ironclad, pit bull biting, lock jaw connection to their goal. Okay, and then they will continuously move in that direction, right? And if your vehicle is what they see to help them get there, they will eventually produce. They will eventually come through. Okay, it will happen for them. So here's the thing. What we do is no different than what brokers do in real estate and mortgages. But it's also except for the fact that when we get those people, when we train our people up to produce, we don't lose them. They don't go out and compete with us. They are on our team. That's what's different. That's one of the things that's different from the candy companies, right? And another thing is you can make money producing on your own pen. You know, you don't have to sell millions of lotions, potions, pills, and vitamins to make any money. You can, you know, a couple families a month, right? And you can make a good living. All right, that's my training for today.